Welcome to Deep Thought, the 4 modes of thinking, right? And I don't think I talked about this any place, but it definitely belongs in Deep Thought, right? And I might do something deeper with it. Now, a source material I use for this is a book by a gentleman I mentioned several times, Master Yao and Yamache Morris. And I'm taking the information from his book, Awakening the Master Feminine, but he's actually presented this in other books that he's had. This is just the most concise. I can just read it real quick to you, right? And understand that there are 4 modes of human thinking. And there's actually a bigger dynamic with it. I might or might not do that in a future podcast, right? But there's 4 ways of thinking. Like, in general, people realize that some people are more feeling in their thinking, and then some people are more logical in their thinking. And there's nothing wrong with that. Now, ideally, if people can use all 4 modes of thinking, that's like a superhuman right there. Shoot, ain't nothing you can get in there. But most people rely on just one. Most people, they just rely on one. Like, a lot of people, if they're very logical, they tend to stay that way, right? So, anyway, let me read this, put this in the record, right? And maybe I'll read it and maybe give a little bit of commentary on it. In fact, let me just read it first and then I'll give some commentary afterwards, right? So anyway, and this is I use this from Awakening the Master Feminine by Master Yao and Yamache Morris, right? He was talking about human intelligence. Now, what he said was, human intelligence is expressed through the human brain in one of 4 ways. The brain arrives at conclusions and makes a judgment based on one of 4 processes. These are integration or intuitive revelation, synthesis or synergistic observation, deductive reasoning or logic, inductive analysis or analysis. Now, deductive reasoning, logic, is linear, left brain, and microcosmic. It is a process of being informed. It separates the subject into small parts and analyzes each one in turn based on the problem. It is to learn by definitions. The conclusion is then deducted from the information gained from the parts. Sciences such as chemistry. Now, that's pretty straightforward. It's pretty rational. It's like A is A. It's rational. It's great for science. Right? Logic is based on the information. It's linear. It's straightforward. They ain't looking at nuances or anything about it, right? Now, sometimes people call something logic when it really is probably something else. It's just what they're feeling, right? Like when a lot of people debate, particularly on YouTube, a lot of people are not using logic. Logic is information. Where's the information? Where's the facts? Where's the back this up, right? Now, it's not to say it's illegitimate. But if you're gonna call it logic, then it gotta be something so like you can point to the information, you can point to the facts, you can point to the documentation. That's logic. Like in chemistry, you're gonna mix some stuff together. That's what's gonna come out. Science. That's when it's a science. Like, of course, I'm known for the relationship stuff. And I've said this is an art, not a science. Some people try to say, oh, there's a science behind picking up women or something like that, right? I'm like, no, it ain't. If it is, you could replicate it every single time. It's an art to it, right? And in fact, something Master Yao said in that book, a sentence real quick. He said to consistently apply logic to relationship situations is to guarantee oneself a steady stream of failure, right? Because relationships, you need another type of brain processes for relationships, right? But of course, logic, it serves its purpose. But, it's looking at the definitions, it's looking at the hard information, right? And of course, you got a lot of people who, particularly men who stick on that. And it has its place, but it's not the only thing, right? Let me go further. Now, inductive analysis. is abstract, left brain, and microcosmic. It separates the subject into its components based on the like functioning of the components. It then employs abstract analogies to work backwards from the desired conclusion to determine what steps must have been involved to get to that conclusion. We understand one thing by comparing it to another. Math, investigative reporting, criminal investigation. All right, you done seen what happened. Like, I've worked as an investigator. You done seen the crime, the situation, whatever. I've also done investigative reporting. Rom's been busy in life, right? But, analysis, okay, how do we get there? You got to analyze it. You got to break the stuff down into parts. You got to use analogy. It's like, okay, how do we get here, right? That's what an analyst does. It's like you see something, then you work backwards to see what happened, right? You're looking at the steps, and you're looking at different steps. It's like, okay, you see this. Like if you say why something happened, right? You have to say, all right, what happened before, right? That's what you're doing. You're investigating and everything, right? So you comparing something to something else. It's like, okay, this situation happened. Like they might say, like if somebody's doing a murder investigation, okay, they know they got a dead body. So it's like you got to investigate. It was like, okay, what's the situation? It was like, okay, it was a man, it's a woman, right? She's killed, right? A lot of times they might have been killed by a partner or something. So you looking at the situation first. Like if a spouse is murdered or somebody's murdered, first place they go is the partner, right? That's the first place they go. All right, that's the first question. That's like standard. It's like, don't mean the person's guilty or anything. They just go there because analysis says, hey, this is, in other situations, this has been the case. So moving forward, he says synthesis. Yeah, synthesis is holistic, right brain, and macrocosmic. In synthesis, you start by an examination of the big picture in respect to how the parts of the whole fit because of the system that connects them together. You are not so concerned with knowing the parts, but understanding of the synergy that allows the system to work. And he had in parentheses common sense, ecosystems, biology, carpentry, apprenticeship, naturopathic medicine. That's when you're looking at the big picture. Right? You ain't just looking at the small parts where you might be doing it with deductive reasoning or inductive analysis, right? You looking at the whole picture, right? And understand, okay, how does this work with that work, right? And some people think like that. That's how they see it. Like, okay, like he uses the term common sense. Like a lot of people, like someone using logic, a lot of people who use just logic don't see the big picture. They see the parts of it. They see the science of it, but they don't see the nuances of it, right? That's why a lot of people who might just use logic to apply it in relationships, it doesn't work for them. They ain't seeing the big picture, right? Like if, let me use the relationship example. If someone wants to know why a particular man is getting plenty of women, right? You can't just look at him. Right? You just can't just look at him and say, oh, he's tall, he's handsome, all of that. You got to look at the big picture. What environment is he in? Is he getting all these women because he works at a retail place? I've worked retail. A fairly handsome man working retail gets plenty of ass. Or is he at a church? He could attend a church where it's 80% female, which was just common. Boom. Right? Or he could be in any situation where there's a bunch of women, right? So you saying, why is he getting women? And see, somebody using logic could just see his body. He got height. Oh, that's why he's getting it. It's like, no, it's the environment, right? You got to look at the big picture. Or say the same handsome guy is saying, well, I'm not getting women. But then it's like, what environment is he in? There's not a lot of women in the environment in his social circles, right? And then, he might not be the type who want to deal with maybe online dating or something, or introvert. You got to look at all of that. Also, too, what's the culture of the place that he's in? You got to look at all of that, right? If he's that guy who's more studious and stuff, and he's in an inner city neighborhood, or he's around a situation where you got a bunch of Pookie and Ray Rays, it might not work for him, even though by logic, if he's tall, handsome, and muscular, he should be getting something, right? That's looking at the big picture, right? That's synergy. You got to put everything together, right? And I probably need to talk about that anyway, right? You know what? I'm going to talk about that in my next one, like just seeing the big picture with relationships, right? But let me move on. Now, the last one is integration or intuitive revelation. Anyway, this is what he wrote. Integration is intuitive, right brain, and microcosmic. This method requires a person to be in a trance state, such as watching TV, dreaming, daydreaming, meditation, yoga, prayer, just absent-minded. A vision of the image is placed in the mind. Remove any preconceived notions about the thing. The right brain then opens up to the subconscious mind and automatically indexes to the sources of information about the thing. It will even penetrate down into the DNA and past life memory. When trained, the subject can even open to the elemental realm or plant, animal, insect kingdom to retrieve information. Wisdom or information is then transferred from those sources into the awake mindful processes, right? Once these inputs are received or transferred by the right brain, the left brain then must figure out how to integrate these insights into a conclusion that makes sense. Often the person will arrive at a conclusion and not understand how they did so. Now, without getting into the more esoteric stuff about that, because I did mention elemental realm and stuff, that's a whole other conversation. I got to gauge when people are ready for that one. If you think about it, let me put it like this: intuition, right? With your subconscious mind pick up every single thing that happens around you, every single sound, smell, and everything, right? It draws it in. Like what you doing when you intuit something? You give that subconscious mind a question. It's like, what do I need to do for this, or what's going on with this person, right? And then your subconscious start working in such a way to like give you the answer, because it's bringing all this information, all this input from different sources, where it's seen this before. And what you're doing is allowing the subconscious, what you're doing is allowing the subconscious to hit you. It usually hits you as a flash, like a boom, like an insight, boom. Like when you just quiet your mind or get it real quiet, that way you can hear the answer that your subconscious is giving you. And you have a lot of people who do that. They couldn't tell you the process. They just seem to know stuff. But all they did was just pull it from other sources, or I'll just say the subconscious source, right? And so, you got some people who are good at that. Now, like I said, if a person is all good at all four of those things, shit, they are damn near superhuman. They are superhuman, right? And I mean it's a powerful thing. It's a powerful thing, but most people are using just one, and that could and that's a cause of conflict, because it's not that either one is wrong. They're just looking at it from different angles, right? But you need those different angles. Now, ultimately, if somebody's looking at the same problem, somebody is more intuitive and somebody is more logical, they can still come to the person with the intuitive person. They come up with, they say, oh, this is the answer. Then the logical person could say, all right, let me see how this work. Or, the analyst, they could say, okay, we got that flash. Let's work backwards to see how you got there. Boom. Right. Or the person who could synthesize everything, they could see the whole picture and say, okay, this is how you got there. Right. So it's something I wanted to share with y'all. So that'll be it for now. I'll talk to y'all later. Peace and blessings.